Dave, have you ever been setting up at a comic convention and on day one, you set your stuff up at the table, you look around and you think to yourself, I've made a huge, huge mistake.
Yes, I've had this a couple of times in my career.
Yeah.
And my God, I mean, you kind of can't be a cartoonist and not have this happen a couple of times.
No.
So my worst one was probably, I don't even remember what it was called. It was either Salt Lake Comic Con or Utah Comic Con, where I set up, and as I'm setting up my booth, I notice something significantly large, like around the corner, sort of catty corner from where my booth was, right? And it turns out it's an entirely full-size WWE wrestling ring. For those outside the U.S., there's U.S. wrestling, which is this fake kind of wrestling that it's like, anyway. But so here's the bad part about that, Brad. Those damn things are loud.
Yeah.
They're intentionally built like a hollow drum so that when you hit, it's like a whang, and the whang like echoes off the cement floor, and then So Brad, this whole comic convention, I'm hearing wham, wham. There were exhibitions every 10 minutes. There was an exhibition match. That was the guarantee.
No.
Like they had huge signage. Every 10 minutes, an exhibition match, and you're like, oh my God. I wanted to murder everyone. Also, there was a sword dealer right next to me. It felt like I was the most carny I've ever felt in my life, you know, where I'm like, what am I doing? How about you? What was your worst one that you've ever had?
This goes way, way back, but somebody had talked me into doing an anime convention. And it was just, it wasn't the, and by the way, I think this is all the way back in the Greystone Inn days, or very, very early Evil Ink comic strip. But it was not the audience for my stuff. It was a terrible fit. And it was one of those alleys that everything was just, like you said, noisy. There was one of these guys that had one of those Wheel of Fortune type things on top of his table. So he'd spin the wheel and it'd go clack, 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 clack.
Which I want everybody to know at home, like that's not annoying once, it's not annoying twice. You hear that 4,000 times over the course of the weekend, you want to murder entire villages. You're like, what's happening?
If this is you, if you're somebody that has that, and you take that to a comic convention, put it on your table, I want you to know, I want you to die in a fire. I want it to be painful. This is a horrible thing. And there was another guy that was walking up and down, again, 2 cardinal sins here. He was standing in front of his booth, not behind, but in front.
I hate that.
Scaring people. You'd see people come down the aisle and see him turn around and just go right out the other way. They didn't want anything to do with this guy. And he had allowed one of those bullhorns, you know, like a handheld speaker that he'd talk into.
Oh yeah.
And he was like barking again, carnival style. You know, come and see. Do you like comics? We've got comics. And Rich Stevens was exhibiting in the same aisle. And he literally just walked up to the guy, and the guy had his bullhorn out. Do you like? And Rich grabbed the bullhorn, pulled it down, and just said one word: no. like the dog that just piddled on the carpet.
Good for Rich, yeah, good.
And that guy sheepishly put his bullhorn down. We didn't hear him the rest of the weekend. He went and stood behind his table where he belonged. But it took somebody literally grabbing that thing, pulled it down. No. And he went back to where he belonged. But I knew this was just the beginning. I knew this was terrible. And of course, nobody was stopping by my table. They were not looking for an American-style newspaper comic. It's just not what you show up for an anime convention for.
You don't go looking for One Piece and then be like, wait a minute, what's this American-style newspaper comic? Yeah.
And I'm sure she thought she was being nice. This very nice young girl comes up and says, no one's standing in front of your table. And by the way, If you're having a weekend where nobody's standing in front of your table, the last thing you want is for somebody to come up and say nobody's standing in front of your table. But she goes, no, this is terrible. No one's standing in front of your table. Then she came around behind the table.
Oh, no. Oh, that's even worse.
Sat down next to me and said, I'm going to keep you company, grabbed my sketchbook and started drawing inside my sketchbook. And then when she was done, tore the paper out.
Of your sketchbook?
Out of my sketchbook. It's the only sketchbook. I've got well over 24 sketchbooks over there. There's only one of them that has a page torn out of it. And it's that one.
It's good that you haven't forgotten this, Brad. It's good that you've let it go.
I'd hold it close. And then basically I was supposed to thank her for spending time with me, and off she trundled with a page ripped out of my sketchbook that she'd been sketching in. And I just sat there grinding my teeth into powder, praying for Sunday so I could get on the plane and go home.
Oh, we have all had that. I love the lack of boundaries coming behind your booth.
It was unbelievable.
Oh my God, Brad! The good news, I can't imagine what caused you to stop doing comic conventions, Brad. I can't see what it was. But on that note, everybody, I'm going to say hello and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making comics
and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Guigar, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Strict.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. I didn't even mention one of the worst ones I ever had at San Diego Comic-Con, which normally is a show that keeps the nonsense to a minimum. Like they don't allow the people out in the hallways. They don't allow you to have a lot of noise. But one year, The Watchmen was premiering, the movie for the comic book, The Watchmen, and they had a trailer. And I was very excited for The Watchmen, Brad. The first time the trailer came up, and it was right across from our booth at a huge Marvel booth. And I was so excited the first time. And then, Brad, the 4,000th time that I heard that Billy Corgan Smashing Pumpkins riff going, and I wanted to just throw my table at the Marvel booth. I was like, I'm so done with this. So, Brad, jumping right into our topics for today, our first question comes in from a reader in the United States via Brazil. So it says, hey, Comics Uncles, I'd love to get your advice, but in order to ask it, I need to give some context. So I'm a Brazilian artist, and from 2011 until 2018, I co-wrote, illustrated, and edited a webcomic that was quite successful in Brazil. Now, living in the U.S., I've been contemplating the desire to see my comic published in English. I can translate it all, even though it's a lot of work. But I feel it'd just be another drop in an ocean of webcomics, especially because I initially don't see how I could build a website just for this series. I'd love for a company to publish the book, and for that, I'd need to have an agent. I know I need to build an audience, Brad. I know the work is old, even though it's good and relevant. I know I should have this material already translated by now. I know maybe I should be focusing on creating new stories. I know I've got to forgive myself for not giving attention to this comic since I've been busy all the time with other projects, many of which I would also love to see published abroad. Brad, what should I do with all this? As always, thank you for your time and wisdom and for always making me laugh a lot and love comics even more. That's very nice. This whole question is very nice. Yeah. But Brad, before we go into anything else, we have to talk about the 19 caveats that like they preemptively knew what Brad Guigar was going to say before Brad Guigar said anything, which is wonderful.
It's funny because we've gotten to this place after 400 episodes where our audience, for the most part, kind of knows what we're going to say, because our answers really haven't changed a lot as far as the broad strokes. Yep, we feel the same way about publishers. We've always felt we're very much going to promote independent comics. We always feel the same way, even though we just talked about comic conventions. We always have felt they're not a very good idea for the most part. You have to, if you do go, you've got to be honest about whether you're making money, a lot of the themes of this show hasn't changed. So we've got this guy says, I know what you're going to say, but I don't know what you're going to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's also, it's like me walking up to Brad and being like, Brad, I've got 2 pairs of pants I can wear. I can either do the blue or the tan. Now listen, Brad, I know I'm going to be frequent, consistent, and significant. I'm going to do creation, curation, commercial kindness, Brad. I'm going to own and control my work. I know my ideas aren't special. The execution of ideas is special. I know, Brad, it's hard to get worse at something I do every day, but I need to know what color of pants to wear, Brad. But I know you can't drive towards your style. You can only see it in the rearview mirror, Brad. I know that, Brad. I just need to know which pair of pants to wear. And I know I'm not going to compare my blooper reel to someone else's highlight reel, Brad. I know that.
Yes.
But I just need to know what color pants to wear, Brad.
All right. So, Dave, here's what you need to know. Have you considered a kilt?
I have not. Have you ever worn a kilt, by the way?
No, but I posted the photo of myself in the tuxedo. It was a picture of you and I posing at the NCS in Boston, and we were both in our tuxes. And I posted it for my Patreon backers in my last newsletter. And one of my Patreon backers says, Brad, you would look spectacular in a kilt. And he's really pushing for next NCS that I show up in a kilt. And I actually, the college I went to, Alma College, has a whole Scottish connection. So Alma College has an official tartan. So I actually could find a kilt made in my college tartan and wear a kilt. I'm kind of half thinking about wearing a kilt next year at the NCS just to do it.
Oh, hold on. Well, now, hold on. Are you going to go full kilt? You know what I mean by that?
I think there's only one way to do it. You can't go half kilt. You can't go half kilt.
You can't go off half kilt. So you're
of course, you're talking to a guy that's got vertigo problems. So if I go off kilter, you'll see full kilt.
If you fall, my gosh. I just want to see you do the Marilyn Monroe over the air vents.
Yeah,
that's what I say.
Yeah.
Look out, ladies. It's Brad being free and liberal. He is, what do you call it when you eat outside? There's a French word for it when you eat outside. You're eating.
Au natural?
No, not au natural.
Al dente?
No, that's chewy pasta. There's a word for eating outside, and you eat.
It's Italian though. It's not French.
It's Italian.
It's it's not on. It's not. It's like al dente, but it's different. It's
if only we knew languages. Anyway,
2 old men trying to come up. So let's answer this guy's question.
Let's answer the question. So, speaking of Italian, let's switch back to Portuguese. So, first of all, congratulations on having a project that you continue to be proud of 7 years after it's finished. That's wonderful. And Brad and I get why you would want to bring it to the U.S. market and the English-speaking market, because Brazil has a comics market that's about $150 million a year, roughly. Yeah, this is me ballparking. And the U.S. and Canada combined, just the North American market, have about roughly a $1.5 to $2 billion comics market. So it's roughly 20 times, 10 times, depending on how you want to do the math of the... Wait a minute, what? Oh, no, that's not 20 times. What is it, Brad?
El Fresca.
Al fresco. That's what it was. Yes. Al fresca?
Al fresca is when you've got a soda pop. Al fresco, I think is the word you're looking for.
Okay,
but yes, Brazil has a very healthy comics buying public.
They do. Yeah. And their comics market, given the size of Brazil, is a humming market.
Yeah.
But the North American market is demonstrably bigger. I mean, neither one are as big as the Japanese market, which is about $4.6 billion or $4.5 billion, depending on how you
look at Johnny Show Prep over here.
Johnny Show Prep over here. He did. Brad, he did a little research. I'm just blown away consistently blown away by how big the Japanese market is.
Yeah.
And the one thing I will say that seems to be true for anyone in English that has ever tried to break into the Japanese market is it feels like the Japanese are collectively, they put their hand on one of your shoulders really softly and they're like, we're good, champ. We got everything we need. We don't need We don't need your book translated. We got everything we need. Because they have a $4.6 billion market that is so established. They have every genre, every style, every type of story you would want. They're like, you know what we don't need? We don't need Drive. We don't need a Champ.
It's just like Brad Geiger at that anime convention. They're saying, as a country, we're not going to stop by your table. And if you try to get here, we're going to draw inside your sketchbook and rip a paper out. So just move along. Go do your thing. Yeah, they are not looking for us. They're not in any way.
So this raises a question before we get into how and why and the brass. I was going to say the brass knuckles. Before we get into the inner workings of how they would do it. Brass tacks. Thank you. Dear God. What a senior moment that was. Before we get into the brass tacks of how they will. By the way, what does that mean? The brass tacks. What a weird Englishism. What the fuck does brass tacks? What do brass tacks have to do with anything? Well, before we get into the brass tacks of it.
What a great show this is. 16 minutes in and we're just two old men yelling at clouds for 16 minutes. By the way, what do they mean by beck and call? Who's Beck? Who's Becca? They say beck and call all the time. I don't know who Becca is.
Because
Give me a fresco.
We're telling this Brazilian Portuguese speaking friend, run, don't walk away from English. It doesn't make a goddamn lick of sense as a language. Brass tacks, what the hell does that mean? Anyway, so before we get into the brass tacks of how they could do it, why they would do it, let's talk about should they do it.
Yeah.
Because is the U.S. market, comparative to what I just said to the Japanese market, is it established enough where there's enough things? I think the answer is no. But are there enough things where it's hard, and why would you want to try to translate? All the extra work is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
All the wheel spinning to get it into English.
Yes.
Is that worth it into such an established market?
I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. But it's the first place you've got to start when you're going to talk about this topic is a cost-benefit analysis. It's going to cost, even though he's doing his own translating, it's a huge cost in terms of his time. He's going to sink a lot of time into that project. It's time that he could be doing any number of other things, as he points out, saying, I know. But we have to focus on this first. It's a lot of time that you need to account for somehow. You're right. You got to get paid for that time if you're a working artist, one way or another. And so the first thing we do is do a cost benefit analysis. How long do you think this is going to take? You don't know exactly, but you can estimate. And then how much would you make if you had taken on a freelance project that took that amount of time? Now you've got some idea of the dollar value that's involved, and you can start to think, okay, this is going to be an XYZ type project. And are you going to be able to build an audience and so forth? You don't know. So where do you don't know the demand is the big problem here. You can estimate the cost, but you don't know the demand. So where do you go when you need free market research to find out whether there's a demand or not? You go to Kickstarter. And that's
Kickstarter.
That's where I would
clever.
take this project. I would take that amount of time that you're spending and put a dollar value on it, whatever that is, and be fair to yourself. This is no time to let your imposter syndrome get in the way and say, well, I'll do that for a nickel. That's fine. Nickel a page. No. Do what I just told you. Take that amount of time that you estimate and put a dollar value on it based on if I was doing a freelance project that took 30 hours, how much would I charge for that? How much do I charge by the hour? Multiply that by 30. And then what I would do is I would get a quote on a very simple book, whether it's the whole thing or the first chapter or the first book in a series of books. You see where I'm going. I would get a book quote on that, and I would launch this on Kickstarter saying, I'd like to translate this into English, and I would like to have a book at the end of it, maybe the first chapter, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to know, is there a demand for this thing? And you put that Kickstarter out, and the thing that we see time and time again is that Kickstarter is one of the last remaining true social media platforms, because I can tell you, as someone whose Kickstarter wraps up at the end of the week, well over 60%, maybe close to 70% of the money that's coming in through this Kickstarter is coming in from Kickstarter related vehicles, right? Kickstarter itself, its discoverability, it's bringing me a lot of new readers. A lot of my existing readers are finding out about the Kickstarter through Kickstarter. And I've been doing granular referral tags because you really got into my head last time, Dave. And
so helpful. It's so helpful.
I went granular with those, and I know what's working, and I know what hasn't even generated a heartbeat, and everything that's working for the most part. And we'll talk about this on an upcoming show. But it's all Kickstarter. So this is a perfect place to take something like this that you've got a little bit of an existing audience for, but you can find out if there's a greater demand, and then you can put that out, have your first book in a series, or maybe it's a book of the entire collection. You have that at the end, but you've got the whole thing. You've got the whole thing, and you can find out if there's a demand for it. I would not take the traditional webcomics route of, well, I'm gonna put it on the web and see if it builds some kind of an audience, because of all the work you've already put into this thing, right?
Yeah.
So this is where I would actually suggest is I would take that project to Kickstarter.
So this is fun, because this might be one of the rare occasions where mommy and daddy fight, because I actually respect your idea a lot. I would not have thought to go to Kickstarter, and I do respect that, but I want to lovingly and respectfully poke holes in your argument, because, and I want to use your own words against you, which is, with crowdfunding, first comes the crowd, then comes the funding. This will be a hard Kickstarter to do, because you will not be able to bring your Portuguese-speaking audience to this and say, hey, gang, you loved it in Portuguese. Now, for the 1% of you that speak English, or pick a number, it doesn't matter what it is. For the 80% of you that speak English, here it is again in English. That's going to be a hard audience to translate, and you don't yet have an English-speaking audience, and you're shipping to the U.S. mainly, I'm assuming, based on your current situation. So the crowd is not there yet to do the funding. So that's point number one in my loving counterpoint to Brad's idea. And then point number two is the work is not yet done. And this is something that I always argue about more than Brad does when someone is kickstarting, is I always say, do not kickstart a book until the work on that book is done, because here is what happens more times than I like to know about. Someone kickstarts a book, it brings in $10,000, $20,000, $40,000, doesn't matter what the number is, right? They kickstart the book, but the work is not done. So they're doing the work of the book while spending the money that they kickstarted for the book, right?
Right.
They then get to the point where the work is done. They now don't have the money to make the book that they kickstarted to make the book. So
You're right. You're right about that.
Am I wrong in that? We have seen that happen dozens of times to cartoonists, is that their work was not done. They go to kickstart it. They spend the money because they've got to live a life. And then they don't have the money to kickstart, to make the physical dang book that they kickstarted. So the whole point is lost. So anyway, what would happen is, I'm imagining that if you translated this book, and we haven't even talked about the lettering set yet, which is going to be a whole separate operation. But you're going to have to translate and then redo all the lettering and layout for, and maybe some small percentage of word balloons you'll have to redo. You will have to, this is a big chunk of work that's probably going to take you more than a year, I'm guessing. This is just ballpark math, but I'm guessing it's going to take you more than a year to translate all this. You're going to spend a lot of that money that you kickstart on a project that probably didn't kickstart for a very high amount, because you're kickstarting to an English-speaking audience that doesn't yet know you, and a Portuguese-speaking audience that doesn't want it in English. It's going to be a big swing, even if it goes in a Kickstarter, because you're going to spend a good chunk of that money. Am I wrong in these two hesitations, Brad?
You're making really good points. And the second one is a killer. I'll just tell you right now. Second one put me dead in the water. First one, I would quibble a little bit, even though first comes the crowd, then comes the funding. When he says that it was really successful in Brazil, right?
Yeah.
That gives me there's a heartbeat there. There's something there. There's something that when he says that, it makes me think I would take a gamble on it, right? Even though if it was anybody else coming to me, yeah, you're absolutely right.
But think about this though. Like I have tons of Brazilian friends whose English is better than mine. There's there's an amazing amount of capable English speakers in Brazil. But what I was getting at is even if they loved it in Brazil, even if they're perfect English speakers, even if they would love to see the comic in English, they're not going to pay for a book to ship from the U.S. to Brazil in English. I mean, they would. I know that exists, but it's like, you're not going to have enough numbers to make that work, you know?
Yes. However, my point is if it was that successful in Brazil, it's clearly got a certain degree of quality, right? It's not like somebody.
Oh, yes. I see what you're saying.
That's
like
putting
that,
out
that
their
it's a proven market.
And they think they're great, but they don't have an audience.
Right.
And that's usually kind of what we're talking to when we say first comes the crowd, then comes the funding. It's a way of saying the same thing we've said about Patreon. Don't start a Patreon the first day of your webcomic. Wait until you built an audience because it's a huge distraction. But and partially you've got a lot of the folks that we're talking to there need to work on their quality first and then work on their monetizing. But when he says it was successful, then it's like, okay, that's got it's got to have a certain degree of quality to it.
Agreed. Yeah.
So I would roll the dice. I wouldn't give anybody else this advice to go directly to Kickstarter in the first step. I wouldn't give anybody else this advice, except I think this might be a kind of a one of those situations where I would roll the dice, meaning, you're not really taking any risk. If the Kickstarter fails, you're not out any money, and at least you've got your answer. There's not a big demand there, and you can go on to other projects. So I'll quibble a little bit with you in that it's a roll of the dice that I would take because I've got a pretty good idea that there's some quality there.
That it can find an audience is what you're saying. Yeah.
Point number 2. Now I'm dead in the water. You're absolutely, and I was not thinking about that. We've had people come on the show and say, I did the Kickstarter, didn't have the job done, didn't have it ready to go to press. And it killed me. And you'd have to be, we could give them all kinds of caveats. Put that into a bank account, put that in, not into your checking account, but into a savings account where you cannot take that money out. We've given that advice time and time again. And we've seen it blow up time and time again because when your mortgage is due, you say, oh, I'll just take a little. Or kid
gets sick or, you know.
I'll just take a little bit out. I'll take a loan for myself and I'll pay it back and it never gets paid back. So on the second one, I've got nothing. You're absolutely right. The fact that it's not done yet, this is not done yet, really kills that whole project.
And I won't throw anybody under the bus, question asker, but I have known Hugo Award winners, Silver Rubin winners, Eisner winners who have Kickstarted books and fell into this same trap. It is not a uncommon thing, is what I'm going to say, is that you, with all the best intentions, kickstart, you're like, I'm going to get the work done. Absolutely, I'm going to get the work done. And for the most part, they do. But the problem is they spend the money in the meantime. Yeah. And then they've got to literally go back to the bank of mom and dad or something else. And it just gets awkward. So, okay, so let me think about what Dave Kellett would offer up as a potential solution to this, akin to what Brad is saying. I would absolutely agree with Brad that what you should do is fully translate, letter, and lay out a page in English with a stopwatch next to you. See how long it takes you to do one, right? Write it down. Then I want you to do 9 more pages. So translate each page with its own timer. Because some pages obviously are going to be a splash page, some are going to be dialogue heavy, but across 10, that should give you a rough average of how long it takes you to translate, letter, and relay out anything that you need to relay out. Because there's going to be some word balloons. We all know Portuguese has a word count is much higher than English when translated. Oh my God, I just remember the toy packaging I used to do for Mattel. Whenever it would get translated to Portuguese, all of a sudden the word count, the worst though was Greek. You translate English into Greek, holy hell. Suddenly you need like 6 more paragraphs. I was like, where are these words coming from?
Yes.
There's
What
like
are
a
we
bus
saying
of Greek
here?
there's a bus of Greek words coming in like, I'm happy to help. Here I am. Here I come. So some languages just require more words to say a thing. And I think you will find that English will have a different spacing than Portuguese.
It has to.
When you go to lay it out.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting a 10-page average, maybe you would say, Brad, a 20-page average would be more healthy, but a 10-page average should get you a ballpark. And then I want you to forecast how long that's going to take you to do the whole book. And then ask yourself, is it better to do that, to spend that amount of time translating this book? Or is it better to do new work which has you excited and which you can start in English, right? That's a big question because it's a version of what Brad and I have said before, which is don't retread old work.
Yeah.
Don't keep going back over the old things, trying to polish it up or fix it or make it better, which is a version of what translation is. Not really, but a version of it. Mm-hmm. Instead, maybe the best path for you is you're now living in the US. You have a fantastic command of the English language. Write in English, write a new comic.
Yeah.
Take all the success of that comic that you were proud of from your time in Brazil and say, I'm going to take all the learnings from that and start an even better story in English. Is that a possibility, Brad? I mean,
well, I'm going back to, we've had this topic for ourselves a couple of times on this show. Would you translate your work into Japanese? Would you, Brad and Dave? Yeah. How come you never have your work translated into Spanish, right?
Yep.
And we're like, because nobody's looking for us in that language. No. And we have said in the past that the one thing we would consider is licensing it to somebody who wanted to translate it and let them take on that labor, take on that risk, and then give us a licensing fee for that and move forward from that point. The thing about it is he's already said he knows that that's one of the things that he should do, right? He already said also he knows he should be working on new work instead of retreading old ground. Right. But it's worth repeating that if the times that you and I have found ourselves in that same position, we've made for ourselves the decision that we're going to suggest this guy do for himself. In other words, yes, if you want to go out and see if somebody wants to license that work and have it translated, and then you're going to have an entertainment lawyer give that a really good look in terms of the contract. Speaking of contracts, I was just looking back at the question. He co-wrote this. You better have.
Oh, I missed that detail. That's important, Brad.
Yeah. That's a big. So now you've got another creative force who has rights to the intellectual property that's got to be addressed as well. Is he
and do they get final approval on the translation? And does that get awkward if they're not an English speaker? And what, it gets that can get tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's something that plays into this whole thing as well. Is handling that other person's that person's claims to the intellectual property that they participated in. So if you want to know what our suggestion is for you, go back to those shows where we answered it for ourselves. We would want you probably to do the same thing. And as you've already indicated in your question, you already know this is something that. I'll come out and say it. My Kickstarter idea was not so hot. I was trying to find something.
I'm not necessarily poo-pooing it.
I wouldn't. Here's the deal. Here's why I've got to say that was not a great idea. I wouldn't have given that idea to anybody else. Right. I was willing to take a gamble on it because of that it was popular already. Right. But I wouldn't. I don't want somebody else to listen to this show and think, well, Brad says roll the dice on a Kickstarter, so I'm going to roll. Nah, there's as you pointed out, there's too many pitfalls in it for that.
Can I jump in on that? Because you actually just sparked on a concept that made me realize we were answering this all wrong.
Yeah.
You said, would I give that answer to anybody else, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the answer we need to give to this question asker is, what would we advise an English speaker who had a comic that was fully drawn, Brad. Everything was drawn. All the pages are colored. Everything's laid out. It's all ready to go. All the pagination's done. The whole story's drawn.
Yeah.
All he needs to do now, Brad, is letter it. That's all he needs to do. And what should he do, Brad, right? Like, think about it that way. What would we tell this person that has a fully drawn comic? It's ready to go. It just needs to be lettered, Brad. We would say, get a website. Start putting up one page a week or one page every couple of days. Maybe that's the answer for this question asker. Is we should give maybe the same advice we would give to a native English speaker that was starting a webcomic, which is get a website, get a social media account that's linking to that website, start sharing this page by page, right? I mean, am I wrong in thinking that?
No. In fact, it's one of the I know statements that he makes. He knows he should have a website. But you're right. You're right. This would be a way to put the work out slowly, right?
Yep.
Work on one page a week, translating one page a week, putting it up on a website, seeing if it builds an audience. It's kind of like no school like the old school thinking. It's kind of what we would have suggested for anybody else. Just put it up on the web. There's no barrier to entry. You can see if there's a heartbeat there.
You can do it slowly.
Yes. And it'll take you a year, 2 years, however long it takes you. But you can see if there's something there that's worth pursuing.
And you'll know within, 50 pages if there's even a modicum of a heartbeat. You have one reader, 5 readers, 10 readers. It's not going to be extraordinary, but you already have a network of Brazilian readers. They will help you network to Brazilian English speakers or English speakers in turn. Your social network is probably bigger than someone, I guess. What am I trying to say? Your social network and your potential reach, to Brad's earlier point, is already bigger than someone starting cold in an English market from 0 point. You have already built an audience that loves and respects your work, right? They just happen to be in a different language. But there's going to be enough crossover and Venn diagram of partial English speakers, all that sort of stuff. They'll help you spread the word. Yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe that's the best route to advise here is put it on a website, do one page a week, translate it, keep working on your new stuff at the other times. And then you have the best of both worlds. You can slowly determine over the course of the year if you have a heartbeat. I mean, let me go into the bigger picture here is that I get it. I still want Drive to appear in French and Japanese.
Yes.
Are the French and the Japanese, Brad, clamoring at my door for Drive? Desperate to see it in French or in Japanese, Brad? Are they desperate to see it?
To quote your average French reader, no.
No, they're absolutely not looking for it. No. And yet, I'm just being honest about it. It's my own ego wanting to... boy, I sure would love to be popular in English. Maybe I'll never be super popular in English. Maybe if I got to France, maybe I'd be popular in France. Maybe I could be popular in Tokyo, that kind of thing.
It's the Hasselhoff theorem.
Yes,
right?
It is the Hasselhoff theorem.
It's the Hasselhoff theorem where he was moderately, and I'm not saying this question asker was only moderate. He might have been a superstar in Brazil for all I know, but Hasselhoff was moderately successful in America, but in Germany, he was a superstar. He couldn't leave the house without being absolutely mobbed by German fans. And there's a part in each one of us that think that maybe there's that one country or that one group of people that we can be Hasselhoff for. And we can all be world famous in Poland, as the Mel Brooks lines once said. And we can and we can find that great success. And it's just we're just one little translation away from it.
That's it. It's my own human frailty that I feel like if I just, Brad, if I just get the translation, surely the French and the Japanese would love me, Brad. They would love Drive.
The only reason they don't love you right now is that they don't understand what you're saying. Imagine how much they're going to love you when they can understand what you're saying.
Right. But also, and this question asker, being a perfect English speaker, doesn't have this problem. I don't speak Japanese. Right. I don't speak French. What's going to happen if they do start to love Drive? I don't know what I'm going to do then. I don't know how to get a book made in Japan. I don't know how to get a book made in French. I don't know any of that. So I know what's happening in my very human heart in this moment when I say I want to be translated in French and Japanese. It's a Hasselhoff moment. Yeah. In the same way that he can't leave an Oktoberfest without getting hit in the face by a bratwurst. bratwurst. I want the same for me. Boy, the eyebrows went up by Brad when I said it that way. Maybe I should have picked a different food than bratwurst.
No, I think that's what. And then like your best case scenario is you're successful. Like if you took my advice and your best case scenario is that you're successful with the Kickstarter, now you've got to ship a bunch of books to United States buyers and backers, and you're going to get absolutely clobbered. You're going to take a shellacking on the postage. There's a reason that Dave and I have curtailed international shipping.
Well, no, remember they're living in the U.S. now, so
are they living in the U.S.?
To curtail that thought.
I missed that. I thought they were still in Brazil.
Gang, both Brad and Dave are having some senior moments today. Wow, can you imagine like halfway through we're like, oh wait, it was Brazil. We're like, oh, I thought it was.
Well, yeah. If he's Brazil, yeah, go for it. I didn't know it was Brazil.
We just completely get the country of origin wrong.
Yeah.
No, see, so I mean, I get it though. This is a work you're proud of. I want you to know that, like, I get the human. Mm-hmm. It's not frailty. Frailty is not the right word. I get the human moment here of an artist that is proud of their work, saying, "Gosh darn it, I speak English. I'm living in the U.S. now. Why can't I have this work that I'm proud of in English in the U.S.?"
Yes.
And I get that. That's a natural, totally valid thought to have, and you can have that. I think my final answer is my thought is do one page a week. Release it slowly on the web as a website. See if you get a nibble. Have a look at it at the end of 1 year. Do you have 50 readers? Do you have 500 readers? All right, then maybe it's worth keeping to go on as a project while you work on new stuff set in English for primarily a US-based commerce market.
Yeah.
I think that's my final pitch. What's your final pitch on this question, Brad?
Final pitch, start working on some new work, even if that new work is a sequel to this thing that was very popular, right? Like you found something that resonated with people. Take what you learned in that project and let that inform your next project. Maybe your next project is a sequel, or maybe it's set in the same world, or maybe it uses some of the same themes, et cetera, et cetera. This is something that that would be my first thought, is that I would want to build off of that success and have it drive into the other one, because think of it that way, Dave. If you're doing, let's say, a sequel to the first one or something set in the same world, as that new thing is building an audience and has its own readership, you can use that readership to point to this other translation and saying, oh, by the way, I'm working on the translation of the work that led to this work. So as they become fans of the new thing, you're also generating a readership for the old thing. And you can kind of have a little bit of synergy there, for lack of a better word, that everything kind of rises all of the boats in your own little comics universe. I would be thinking about what I could do that would be like a tie-in for this thing, so that you're basically building fans of both things at the same time.
Right. I see what you're saying. So you start writing your Lord of the Rings in French with the hope that in time, once the audience is there, you bring your Hobbit over via translation, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's also a valid option. I honestly, now that we're at the end of the answer, I like both Brad's final answer and mine. And I think we both would agree that we both kind of like the other one's answer. Brad's like, no, I don't like Dave's answer.
No. I agree 100%. I agree 100%.
So I think this was have you ever, by the way, looked at one of our answers and you look up at the clock and you're like, 35 minutes? We took 35 minutes to answer this question?
It did not take us 35 minutes. It took us 15 minutes to talk about al fresco and comic conventions that we hated.
That's true. That is true.
We've only answered this question for about 5 or 6 minutes.
Everything else has been nonsense. Hey, gang, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we'll tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Yeah, because when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And you'll get access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And ho Nelly, if you want even more comics goodness in your life, check out the new drawing show that we're doing with our pal Kevin McShane over at wrongwayshow.com. That's wrongwayshow.com.
In each episode, we'll show you how to draw your favorite cartoon characters the wrong way.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics. Well, let me jump us into our next question, Brad. This comes in over at patreon.com/ComicLab and it says, "Hi, Comics Uncles. I was recently laid off from my day job of 5+ years in a tech position. As part of this layoff, I'm being given 6 months of severance that matches with what I was making at my old job." By the way, that's great. Yeah. "I'm still going to look for a new day job while also building a pitch packet and drawing new pages to submit to Kid Lit agents for a traditional book deal for my comic. As two people who previously had non-comics day jobs, I wanted to ask, what advice would you have for a cartoonist that suddenly had more time to position the business side of their comic career? I intend to be careful when applying to my next day job because my chosen industry is in chaos right now, like the rest of the world, and I want to avoid it giving me burnout again. I'm considering the potential that I could make a go of it with a full-time cartooning and Kidlit as an option, but it would also be a family decision to consider based on how our dual income status, and I think that's important, our dual income status is time limited now, and my old job paid a considerable amount of money. Thanks again for the show and for all the friendship vibes you bring to inspire hope and creativity when times are sour." Brad, this is a question that we get probably once or twice a year about like, "Hey, Brad and Dave, I'm laid off and now I've got all the time in the world. What do I do?" And so what is our answer, Brad, to this very specific question about how someone should handle being laid off and time being given to them, basically?
Have you considered learning Portuguese?
I did not see that as a conversational turn. Have you considered moving to Brazil and breaking into that $140 million comic market?
So here's the problem. 6 months. 6 months seems like a long time. But okay, so here's the problem. We have traditionally told people that if you're going to try to make that career turn, make that pivot into a full-time cartoonist, that you should have at least 6 months of...
at least.
Yeah. If not, I think these days, if we were going to record the show and answer that, it would be closer to 9 months or maybe a year of money that you can count on to pay all of your bills and not worry. And so it's very understandable where this person says, "Hey, I've got 6 months severance. I can do this," right?
Right.
I think your best use of your time in the next 6 months is finding a new day job. And I'll tell you why. When we say, if you're planning on making a pivot to full time, you need at least 6 months, we're talking to the person who's already making maybe 50% or 60% of their income through comics. They've got a burgeoning career, and they're at that point in their career where they know they could go full time if they just had more time to put into this thing that's already generating a significant amount of money. And I'm not saying you're not generating money. I'm not saying you don't have revenue, but I'm saying unless you are at the point where you can really look at your income and say, "I'm doing XYZ by putting 20 hours a week into it," I can easily see how I can make twice that by putting 40 hours or maybe hopefully more than twice that. And you know how you're going to do it. And you've got a really good sense of you're going to be successful.
Right.
Then you need to go back and focus, especially in this job market. You're going to need the next 6 months to find a new day job. and to keep that kind of structure and that kind of foundation in your life that you can, and I'm talking about economic structure here, that you can pay your bills and not have that kind of stress. I can tell you from experience, and I wanted to leave my day job desperately for the last several years that I was at the Daily
did.
News.
And having known him at that time, he sure did.
I was miserable.
He talked about it all the time.
And I literally thought that leaving my day job was going to be the finish line. Like, this was it. And I had the same and I was making a significant amount of money in webcomics at the time that I took the buyout. And I had what I thought was a very good plan for what I was going to do to make the extra money come in. And I found out very quickly that this was not the finish line. This was the starting pistol. And a lot of those things that I thought I'll just put some extra hours into it and it'll pay back in dollars and cents did not work the way I thought they were. And I found myself very quickly in a situation where I really had to rethink all this stuff that I thought I knew. And I was starting from a very confident position. I had money in the bank and I knew I could do certain things to make that happen. And it did not turn out at all the way I thought it was going to turn out. You are starting most likely, and I don't know your circumstance. I don't know who you are, but my sense is you're starting at a much lower place in your progression as a cartoonist.
Agreed. That was my read on the way the question was asked. Yeah.
And that means you're not at the point where you can do this yet. And I know it's very tempting, like we just got done with this other question asker. It's very tempting to say, this is my moment. This is all I need. I've got a golden ticket, an opportunity to make this happen. And I tell me what you think about this. I might give it 2 months and say, I'm going to try to find, let's say that this person was doing comics for kids, right? And it's the one area, Dave, that consistently we always say that that's where you should be working with a publisher. If you're doing kids lit or middle-aged graphic novels, stuff like that, then you should be working with a publisher because there's too many barriers to entry. So let's say that was you. You're doing kid stuff. And I'd give you 2 months of solid time to find maybe an agent or to make pitch packets to publishers, et cetera, et cetera. 2 months. And then after that, unless there's a contract sitting there on your table for you to start working on, then you got to use that next 4 months to start looking at your day job again. What do you think? Are we giving this person good advice?
Yes, I do. Here's the thing. I'm going to talk about this as a Californian for a second, because whenever an earthquake hits in California, and I've lived in California for about 42 of my years, right?
Wow.
And whenever an earthquake hits, my immediate thoughts are, can I get out of the building if this is a certain kind of an earthquake? There's some that are just like slow rolling, some that are quick jolty earthquakes.
Yeah.
Can I get out of the building? Or if not, where is the nearest door frame that looks like it has a sizable, like 6-inch or more wood or steel crossbeam across it, right? And where is glass in the room that I'm in? I got to get away from the glass.
Right.
And do I have shoes on? And if I have a second, can I grab my car keys? Because then I can sleep in the car if it's a really bad earthquake, right? Yeah. So, I know this sounds stupid that I have these thoughts, but they all come really rapid fire,
boom,
right?
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. Where are my kids? Is there a door frame? Is there glass nearby? Where are my car keys? Do I have shoes on? Because, you live through 20 or 30 earthquakes of 6.0 or higher, and you're like, all right, I've got a system now how I do this.
Yes.
And so the reason I mention all that is when you get laid off by a job, holy shit, is it a panic-inducing moment? And you go, okay, where's my money? Where are my kids? What do I have to do for a mortgage? What are my options? What do I do? Well, if this doesn't work, what else can I do? It's not unlike having to deal with an earthquake in your life. You're like, what are the 6 things that I could do right now to make money? What can I do? Or if I had to sell blood, what could I do to go to sell blood? I'm not kidding. Like when you get laid off, it's a whole series of panic-inducing thoughts that like, what can I do? What are my options? What can I handle right now? And I can sort of sense that in this question of like, I've been laid off. How quickly can I start my comics career? You know what I mean? And the answer is 3 to 5 years you can start your comics career, not in 6 months. You can't do it in 6 months, you know? And that's a version of what Brad is saying is that, yes, we understand the moment you're in, the panic that you're in, and also the recognition that 6 months of full pay is an opportunity, yes. But Brad's saying it's an opportunity to reestablish structure in your life such that you can get the cartooning going at a sizable, responsible pace. Yeah. Let's look at it this way. You know you have a 6-month severance coming your way. My thought is get a job right away. Now you have 5 months of severance in the bank, right? That you now have saved up. You have 5 months of an emergency fund plus a daily income job that you're going to again, right? Now start building your comic. What I want you to do is build up 9 to 12 months of full living expenses as a savings so that when you do have a comic 3 to 5 years from now that's bringing in 40, 50, 60% of your income. I'm not saying 50% of your total income. I'm saying if you have a day job that's bringing in $100,000, your comic is bringing in $50,000 or $60,000, right? Yeah. Such that you know that if you could give it 40 hours, 60 hours, 70 hours a week, you could get it up to $100,000. Right. You get to where I'm going with that. It's a version of what Brad was saying. But in the meantime, you're using the 5 to 6 months of severance. You bank that. It's now your emergency fund. You're trying to slowly build that over the next 3 to 5 years, to 9 months or up to 12 months, such that when your comic is ready, you have 9 months of emergency fund or 12 months of emergency fund, and your comic is bringing in 40 to 60 to 70% of your weekly income on your day job. That's the time to leave. That's the responsible time as an adult. I'm sure with responsibilities that you didn't mention in your message there, in your question. That's the responsible way to do it. Because both Brad and I have seen people leave the job and then 2 years later have to go back and get the day job again. Yep. That's a painful one to have to go back to. I will say, because I haven't thought about it in a long time, Brad, about a year after I left Mattel Toys, Mattel called me and they're like, hey, would you oversee this project? It would be about, I don't remember what it was. It was like an 8-week gig. And I remember I took it because my comics income hadn't built up as fast as I hoped it would after a year. And I don't know that I've ever mentioned this.
I've never heard this story.
I hadn't thought about it in 17 years or whatever there. I don't know how long it's been. But yeah, I did go back to Mattel for 40 hours a week for about, if memory serves, it's been decades. It's like 7 or 8 weeks to help spearhead a project. Yeah. And the pay was real good, so I took it. But my point at that was I had all the best intentions and I had done it with a super amount of structure and a bunch of savings in the bank. I think I had at that point a year of savings that I could go fall back on. And I was burning through it a little faster than I hoped for, Brad. And I went back to Mattel for 8 weeks. I mean, did you have anything in your first years, that freelance jobs maybe that you took that you didn't?
When I left, they were like, don't let the door hit you in the ass. Nobody was looking for Brad Geiger to come back. But I do think that you've given the best advice possible on this. In other words, saying you've got that 6-month severance. Bank that. Go back to work right now.
Yes.
Start working on making that into a 9 months severance that you can give yourself, or a 1 year, because unless you are really at the point where you can pull the trigger on a number of projects today,
you're not have money generating income. Yeah.
Because like when I left the Daily News, I did have a number of projects that I could pull the trigger on immediately.
He did, right? And he did.
Yes. Yeah. So unless you've got projects that you can pull the trigger on likewise today, then you're not ready yet. And
you're not ready. Yep.
You need to go back to work. The good news is that you've got a head start. You can put that 6 months in the bank, let it make interest, put a couple $100 in every pay period to build that up. That's how you're going to, here's the deal. It's going to suck to go back to work. But every month when you're, or every 2 weeks, whatever you're getting paid, when you put a little chunk of that into your, I'm going to become a full-time cartoonist severance package that you're going to give yourself at some point. Every time you put a couple $100 into that, it's going to make it sting a little bit less. And you can see that grow and grow. And you'll be able to, at some point when you really are ready for this, then you can take a much bigger chunk of money out and you can be ready. I think that was the best, hands down, the best strategy for where this person is what you laid out.
Yeah, and listen, both Brad and I get it. When you're laid off and you do see opportunity in this moment, I get that.
Yeah.
But I don't, to Brad's point, this is not, you're not ready. Based on the phrasing that you're using in your question, when you say, like, I'm looking for a kidlet agent, I'm putting together a pitch packet, all that sort of stuff. You're not ready to start monetizing your comic right now. And frankly, I don't even see it in 6 months from now. Like, I can sort of see the writing on the wall there. So, Brad, go ahead.
What do we know from our people who have signed contracts to do like middle-aged graphic novels and stuff like this? They get a advance, which is very nice, gets them through a few months, but then the real money doesn't come in until that book comes out, right? And then hopefully they get another book and they get an advance, but then there's a decline in that too. And like Scott's been on the show and said that there's not really a certain amount of stability there until you hit like your third book and you're now cooking and you've got a bunch of things that are paying off at the same time. And you're working on the book number 4 and you're going on and on like that. He's explained that very clearly, like, okay, you're looking for a kidlit author or a literary agent. That's fantastic, but you're still in the hole. Best case scenario, you sign that agent, they get you a book all within 3 weeks. You're still in the hole by the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Like, even if you got an agent by tomorrow, right? Yeah. And they started pitching your book pitch around. That's a couple of months potentially of just pitching it around.
Yes.
Then there's the contractual negotiation that could take a week. It could take 7 weeks. Could take a while. That takes a while. Then the first check has to clear. By the way, it's also going to be smaller than you anticipate. I don't care what tech job you're coming from. The book advance for a kidlit, the first time kidlit author is going to be smaller than you anticipate. So yeah, it's going to take longer and going to be a smaller number than you think. Yeah, coming from tech, and so I really want you, as someone who has gotten used to a house and responsibilities that rely on 2 incomes, to build up that emergency fund to 9 months or a year, and have the comic already generating 40 to 70% of what your day job is generating. Not that it's 40 to 70% of your total income, 40 to 70% of what the day job is generating before you make this leap. And then for everyone that was wondering, because I looked it up, I have lived through 10 6.0 or higher earthquakes in Southern California in my lifetime. Yeah. So that's and probably, I didn't do the math, but probably 30 to 40, 5.0 or bigger, but 10 above 6.0. So yes, Brad, I do have a system for what I do when an earthquake hits. I know that's ridiculous, but I think it's related to a job loss because it's sudden, it's unexpected. You're suddenly terrified. You're panicking because you're worried about you and yours, and you're worried about how to get everybody out safe. It's not unlike a job loss all of a sudden, you know? And
it's good to have a system. Well, like when you've got an earthquake coming up, it's good to have a system. As a matter of fact, I've got a system for when we come to the end of an episode of ComicLab. I always say you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Gang, I didn't see it coming. My heart, like the Grinch, my heart just grew 10 sizes. I'm going to say your hosts have been my friend Brad Guigar, the master of the transition and the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com and the co-host of the fantastic new drawing show that you 100% should go check out right now after listening to this show. It's at wrongwayshow.com.
And my close personal friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com. And another handsome co-host along with our friend Kevin McShane of the drawing show wrongwayshow.com. The most recent episode, so good. I cannot wait for you guys to see it.
Oh my God, I love it.
Love it.
Yep, there's now 7 in the can out in the world. Go check them out if you haven't checked them out yet, friends. And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by the ever-wonderful, ever-whimsical Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, and we know that you do, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode like this one.
Do we have one, Brett?
We've got
have a review?
5-star review. And listen to this. Always a delight. Always informative. Always keeps the creativity flowing. Thanks, gentlemen, from Mr. Will Henry.
Mr. Will Henry, my goodness, one of my favorite cartoonists. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Will, thank you so much.
The creator of Wallace the Brave, a fantastic syndicated comic strip, and a guy we've got to get on the show pretty soon. Great guy.
Absolutely, we got to get him on the show. I have a Wallace the Brave that I'm about to frame up and put on my wall, Brad.
Nice.
That's how nice Will is. So, Will, thank you for the kind words. And I'm going to say Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So we will go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/guy standing in the aisle in front of Brad's booth.
I had one person come up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy I found you." I said, "Are you a reader?" He says, "No, but all the other booths are so crowded."
I have never felt more out of place than when I did an anime con. In fact, I did it with you one year.
Yeah.
And I think we were special guests of the show. I don't know why they had us out.
I have no idea.
It was Baltimore or somewhere like that. Anyway, oh boy, were we fish out of water in an anime and manga show. We did not belong. The guests knew we did not belong. Yep. We knew we did not belong. Only the convention organizers did not know that we did not belong.
Yep.
And they invited us.
It was a kindness. It was nothing but kindness. But oh man, we were not a good fit.
It's funny though. Do you think, if you could travel back in time, would you tell young Brad Guigar to not even do that show, or would you still do it for the?
I would tell young Brad Guigar a lot of stuff, and the young Brad Guigar would tell me to stuff it. Young Brad Guigar wouldn't have been smart enough to take any of the advice that old Brad Guigar would give him.
Well, let me ask you this, because we always talk about young Brad Guigar. If truly old Brad Guigar traveled back in time right now, would you take advice from 75-year-old Brad Guigar?
You know what? I honestly think I would, because I've had enough experience now to know how much I don't know. And so if an older cartoonist came up to me and said, "You know what? You really ought to consider XYZ," I would really have to sit with that, even if I disagreed with it. And work through that. Because young Brad Guigar was certain that he knew everything, and old Brad Guigar knows that he was full of shit, you know. but knowing how much you're full of shit at a certain point in life is very valuable, because then I listen to things a lot more differently than I would have otherwise.
It is. It's akin to that Donald Rumsfeldian phrase of "you don't know what you don't know."
Yeah.
Is now you know how full of shit you are, even today, and so you're willing to listen to someone from your future who would tell you how full of shit you are. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So my thought would be, if future Dave Kellett traveled back in time to tell present Dave the things that I potentially am doing wrong.
Yeah.
My thought was, this guy is risking a trip through space-time continuum, risking the butterfly effect just to try to nudge me in the right direction. I better listen to this guy, you know?
Yeah. He's spoken like a sci-fi writer.